You're listening to Beyond the Endpoint, a podcast from the Duke Clinical Research Institute. In this series, we're demystifying clinical research and answering your pressing questions about health and healthcare. You can find our full episodes at dcri.org/BTE.
What would you do if someone collapsed in front of you right now? Would you know what to do? This is a really critical question because unfortunately in the United States, more than 350,000 people suffer sudden cardiac arrest each year. And yet, unfortunately, 90% of those people pass away. My name is Manesh Patel. I'm a cardiologist at Duke University, and I'm joined with my colleague, Emily O'Brien. And this is a really important episode. Emily, thanks for joining me. We're going to have a guest on in a second. I'm going to tell you a personal story here, and then we can talk about what we're trying to do with that. So welcome, and thanks for joining me on this, Emily.
Thanks so much, Manesh. So excited to get into this discussion. What's your story?
I was a second-year resident, and I'd covered the holiday shift, and this is, I think, 1998, 1999. And at that time at Duke, if you were doing something good, they gave you tickets to the Durham Bulls. So I was on a date with my wife, who at that time wasn't my wife, with another resident, and we were sitting in the game, and about the third inning, someone behind us started to labor and breathing, and then unfortunately went down. Honestly, even in the medical field, it's scary to be like, oh, you're not in the hospital. What should you do? Even if you think you know what to do, it's a scary moment. So thankfully, my colleague David and I got up, went back there, and started trying to jostle him. It was scary. He didn't have a pulse, so we started doing CPR. We started trying to move him out of the seats, got him to the ground. Stadium security showed up, thankfully, and there was actually, to our great joy, a nurse in the area too, who was probably better equipped than us, and so she joined us too. Starting doing CPR, they showed up with an AED. We were able to eventually put the AED on him. We were rolling him towards EMS when they showed up and shocked him twice. Got put into the truck, got sent to Duke. Now, we were there pretty quickly, and thankfully he got to Duke Hospital. I know that he eventually went to the cath lab and survived. And I have to tell you, playing a role at Duke in cardiology, one of the most gratifying things you can do is participate in increasing the awareness of CPR, increasing people that do CPR. It is always a scary time whenever people arrest, whether it's in the hospital or not. And it's totally understandable why bystander CPR really is hard to do. And if we can double or triple the survivor rates just by getting people to do some of those actions, such as hands-only CPR and or calling for defibrillators, it can make a difference. So it's really understandable just how scary these moments can be. And so that's why we're really excited to have our guest with us today.
Well, thanks for sharing that story, Manesh. It's a really incredible success story on a small scale. But what I'm so excited about today is kind of thinking about how to scale that behavior and how do we bring that kind of mindset and that thinking and really that courage to people who may feel even more hesitant than you did at the time. And so today I am thrilled that we are going to be joined by Tyler Cope, who is a clinical research associate with the DCRI, a PhD student in population health sciences here at Duke, and a member of the DCRI's race cars team. This is an incredible team. We're going to hear a lot about what they've been doing recently, but they've been spending really years working to improve outcomes in out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, and they just accomplished a major feat in bringing training to people in North Carolina. So we're really excited to hear about that today. But Tyler, before we get started talking about race cars, I just have to know, what is more challenging to get through? An event where you train 20,000 people to do hands-only CPR, or an hour-and-a-half lecture from me on biostatistics as a first-year PhD student?
I think I know the answer to that, Tyler, but you can take the fifth here if you have to.
Oh, man. Well, considering that Emily may or may not be in my dissertation committee, I'm going to take the fifth on that one. And I just want to say thank you for having me. As a longtime listener of the show and mega fan, this is the biggest honor.
First of all, you've obviously been well-trained. You definitely got the right answer to that question. What's sort of the connection between your professional background in PT and what you're doing now with respect to CPR and implementation science?
So my background is as an athletic trainer and physical therapist, and I ended up working at Duke for quite a few years. And then around 2019, 2020, I started working with a colleague of mine on nights and weekends, trying to launch our own health tech app as entrepreneurs. And although that didn't work out very well, it did get us interested in how do we change care at a higher level or at a population level. We were trying to see how we could change care delivery for musculoskeletal conditions, something a recent guest, Dr. Stephen George, talked about. But from there, we pivoted and I got into population health research, working as a clinician researcher on Dr. George's pragmatic trial. And soon after joining that and working on some implementation interventions, I really fell in love with the discipline. And so at that point, I pivoted again, and I went from being a clinician to working at the DCRI and working on pragmatic and implementation trials. And that led me to the race cars clinical trial. And so while I'm not necessarily in cardiology, I do have a little bit of a background as an athletic trainer and thankfully never had to perform CPR or use an AED, but we always had to stay ready. And so that kind of brought me from a clinician to working in population health sciences and pragmatic trials. And yeah, it's been a great ride so far.
It's really amazing. And I think it's a powerful story. What we hope is people keep following their dreams and finding ways to make a difference. Remind us about race cars, what it stands for, and maybe just like the overarching goal.
So race cars stands for the Randomized Cluster Evaluation of Cardiac Arrest Systems. And our goal is to improve survival from out of hospital setting cardiac arrest.
Yeah, pretty laudable. Thanks for doing it. And tell me a little bit about when you started working on the study or thinking about resuscitation sites, not just CPR with race cars. How did you get introduced to it, and what did you think when you first started?
I got introduced to the study, and I really looked at it from the standpoint as an operator. And when you look at some of these really large pragmatic trials or implementation projects like race cars, I mean, the content areas are different from cardiac arrest to musculoskeletal care to other areas, but the way in which you think about executing the vision and getting intervention from ideation to actually getting it on the ground and working with people out in the real world, I think there's a lot of overlap between therapeutic areas. And so for me, when I got introduced, I met with the principal investigator, Dr. Chris Granger, and he said, all right, here's your job. I want you to try to train over 500,000 people in CPR over 4 years and go. And so that was really my introduction to the project. And thankfully, we have a great team and great structure around that, or at least we have developed one over the years. And that's kind of led us to where we're at now.
Yeah, that sounds very much like a Chris Granger goal. He was also one of those people who was doing implementation science before it was cool. So I'm sure offers a lot of insight and sort of a different level of training than you would get elsewhere. But Tyler, can you zoom out a little bit for us? I mean, we've been hearing about these interventions for a long time. And I remember when I was in grad school, this, was close to several decades ago. But this was when there was a ton of interest in doing things like putting AEDs in every terminal in the airport, for example, and like really trying to improve this terrible survival rate that Manesh mentioned for out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. Why is out-of-hospital cardiac arrest still so deadly in 2026?
So out-of-hospital cardiac arrest, or when the heart stops beating effectively, it can lead to death within minutes. And for every minute that somebody doesn't receive CPR or have defibrillation from an AED, their chances of survival go down by 10%. And when you think about the fact that the median response time from EMS is around 7 to 10 minutes, if you do the math on that, if people don't have CPR or, again, an AED used on them, then their chances of survival are quite low. And right now, it's only about 1 in 10 people surviving. I think the reason that those stats haven't improved very much, one is that it's really a cultural phenomenon of people feeling prepared and being able to respond and not feeling they have to necessarily have some super specialized training or that they're not a medical professional. I mean, really, cardiac arrest, it's kind of a bystander intervention, right? It's a bystander response. And so, if our entire population knew how to perform CPR and use an AED and could respond immediately, you're certainly not going to get still 100% survival rates, but I think those survival rates could go up quite a bit. And we've seen that in other countries around the world where the culture around CPR and AEDs has improved. And so we're trying to be a little bit more like that in the United States.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I guess I would say from both the cardiovascular perspective and then the Global American Heart Association perspective, we're trying to build a nation of lifesavers, people that will feel comfortable doing CPR and anyone who goes down with this concepts you just mentioned, Tyler, because for every minute we're waiting, as you highlighted, there's 10% chance they're not surviving. And, I sort of said it in that story, but at the Durham Bulls, there was an AED at the park. There were people who started CPR immediately. One might start by just saying that CPR itself is an amazing innovation. starting with the idea of cardiac massage and keeping the heart pumping, the idea that you can do CPR to keep blood going to the brain and other critical organs while you do things to try to get people shocked back into normal rhythm or help their heart. That in itself is an act of grace, but that's a scary act because it is a traumatic time. And so getting over those things is a large step of not just hesitancy to act. They were worried about touching people, gender concerns, a variety of legal issues people may have. And, we've gotten in other parts of the world and here too, very comfortable showing that there's, with hands-only CPR, no downside to helping someone potentially get to the kind of care. Is that some of the things you teach when you're out there talking to people, Tyler?
Yes, I think you hit on a lot of the barriers to bystander CPR, and that is a fear of lawsuit, right? And we do have the Good Samaritan law, which is a protection for non-medical responders doing their best at providing care to people in need. So again, fear of lawsuit, not feeling comfortable having had any exposure to it, feeling they might hurt somebody, which is really doesn't make a whole lot of sense when if you don't respond, they're certainly going to die. And so that you really can't hurt them any more than they currently are. And then, just feeling overly distraught, and also issues of what if I have to do mouth to mouth? Is this safe? Is this clean? And so I think a lot of these fears are alleviated if we educate our public. All you need to do is compressions, and you acting is the best possible thing you can do in that situation. And you really shouldn't fear hurting the person, or you shouldn't fear, any kind of other negative consequence.
I think that's a really great way of thinking about it. I'll just say, as I started this episode talking about this, I didn't have any concern about laws. I was just scared of, out of hospital arrest. You just have to get comfortable with knowing that you can do hands-only CPR. I would say for people that have asked me in the past that, they're extremely rare to actually have any lawsuit against a bystander for trying to perform CPR. In fact, there's been more sometimes cases for people who aren't responding or delaying aid for accidental injury or other things. But the Good Samaritan laws in general are aimed to protect individuals who are trying to save a life in good faith. And we've found that many, many people are comfortable with it. And so I do want to make sure we address that, because if that's at all a concern, they should know that it's extremely rare and for not responding more than responding sometimes.
This is Beyond the Endpoint, a podcast where we bring personal and expert perspectives on healthcare and clinical research to the casual listener. Stay tuned after the interview for a breakdown with the hosts. They'll talk through key takeaways and what this week's topic means for you.
There's so many different kind of pathways or like mechanisms that we might say are worth kind of targeting. And for race cars, you all had what sounds like kind of a systems level hypothesis that you were testing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that hypothesis was for that trial in particular?
Yes. So our trial essentially randomized 30 counties in North Carolina to being an intervention county and 30 counties to being a control county. And our hypothesis was that if we could change how care is delivered at the system level in those 30 intervention counties, that over a 4-year intervention period, we will see an increase in survival rates as well as increase in bystander CPR rates. And so those 3 interventions are carried out locally, led by local emergency medical services or EMS professionals working with their community members. And so those 3 interventions are: 1, can they work with their local 911 telecommunicators to better recognize cardiac arrest over the phone, and then coach bystanders in hands-only CPR. Again, fun fact that if you call 911 for a medical emergency with cardiac arrest, they will coach you over the phone, or at least they should. So that's just nice to know. The second intervention is that we are looking to get more first responders, such as fire and law enforcement, on the scene of a cardiac arrest and with an AED in hand. Something that shocked me, no pun intended, about this intervention is that growing up in Wake County, which is the largest county in North Carolina, I assumed that every firefighter and law enforcement official had an AED in their vehicle and always responded to cardiac arrest. But when you step out and you look at some of the rural areas in our state and across the country that don't have the funds they need, there's a lot of times where there is no full-time firefighters that respond to cardiac arrest. They don't have AEDs in their vehicles. So part of our second intervention is, can we have more first responders on the scene and with AEDs in hand? And then the third intervention is the one we've been alluding to, and that is mass community CPR training. And our goal there is, can we work with local EMS and their community partners to set up systems in place to train at scale? And can we go beyond just a few small CPR training tents on the weekend to truly mass training to get 10% or more of a county's population trained and educated in hands-only CPR? So that's kind of how we've approached it. And we are currently in the last year of our intervention that will end in June.
Really powerful. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it speaks to a lot of the resuscitation guidelines and some of the things that we already know we're supposed to be doing, but are sometimes the hardest to do, especially when there's resource constraints or the geography might be difficult to get a defibrillator closed. And there've been these concepts of 4-minute communities, right? If you could shock the heart within 4 minutes, you can increase survival significantly. So before we get into how you actually go to try to train 20,000 people or whatever number Chris Granger is trying to get you to do, can you tell us were there specific outcomes that you guys are saying, okay, as we go forward for this trial race cars in our state, are there things that you'll be measuring sort of along the way, process outcomes and then patient level or county level outcomes?
That's a great question, and one that I would love to answer, because I think this is something that anybody interested in implementation science or pragmatic trials should consider. And that is, when you are implementing an intervention, it's so important to know whether or not the intervention is followed as intended, or said another way, having intervention fidelity, thinking about how many people are adopting your intervention, what kind of reach are you getting, is it being sustained? So there's a lot of things that go beyond the traditional measurement of did you get your health outcome or not? And that's something that at least I've tried hard over the past few years to set up systems in place for. And so quarterly, I'm working with counties to get data on how many people ballpark they have trained to know our reach, who's involved in that process, and other aspects of implementation measures to really see whether or not what we are implementing is actually being used, into what degree. So those are our main, at least for the community intervention, those are some of our main process outcomes. And then we feed that back to them, right? So I get that data, we're able to put that into a dashboard and then communicate that to them in site visits, as well as, through different types of media communication. And then you also mentioned some of the health outcomes, and we are working with the CARES registry, which tracks outcomes of sudden cardiac arrest. It's tracked in the field, it's tracked in the hospital, and now there's a new 911 module, and we are tracking all types of 911 metrics with that. We're tracking survival rates with good neurological function, tracking bystander CPR rates, AEDs applied prior to EMS arrival. So those are some of our main goalposts that we're looking to get to. And so, again, we have that data for both intervention and control counties, and we're looking to see how that is changing over time.
Tyler, it's really amazing. I mean, there's some messiness here, right? It's inherent to the project that you have to, even just from the data side, collect data from so many different sources and think about what the right metrics are. And yeah, I'll just say it's not a bad place to start your career, because I think a lot of things will seem pretty easy after you get done with this project. But tell us how this training event started, 20,000 people. It sounds like Chris sort of assigned this to you for your career, but was he also the sort of spark for this particular project?
Chris is just the biggest cheerleader and hype man that I know. And so he's been promoting all kinds of big events throughout. But I want to give credit here to one of our community partners, Chris Tucker in Warren County, who works with EMS over there. And it was actually his idea as a community member to suggest us breaking the CPR world record. And so I thought about it. I brought it to Chris and I said, Chris, what do you think about it? And of course, he loved the idea. And so the existing world record was held in India, I believe, in 2016. And they had a ton of people at their university. I don't know how large that university is or how many people are around, but they were able to train 28,500 over the course of a day at that university at one site. But then when I stepped back and thought about it, we have 30 participating counties. If every county can train 1,000 people, well, shoot, maybe this is possible. And so what I look for, again, as an implementation operator practitioner is I'm looking for pull, I'm looking for traction, I'm looking for people to really grasp onto things rather than me pushing things onto somebody else. And so I floated it by some of our counties and community partners, and they absolutely took it and ran with it. And so that gave me the signal that we should really go forward with this. And after that, it hasn't been that long of a planning period. I think I started probably in September or October of 2025. And again, with the energy and the commitment from the counties involved in the trial, we've been able to take it from there and go all the way up to CPR day.
It's really fantastic. So how did it go?
It went fantastic, better than I could have ever imagined. Leading up to the date, again, it's having every county locally organized with their community partners to figure out a way to train people on the day. And just for the listener, what counted as a training for the world record was we wanted every person trained to have some education on what sudden cardiac arrest is, and then also how to perform CPR, hands-only CPR, and then perform at least 100 compressions on a mannequin. Now, counties could do more than that if they like, but that was our minimum standard. And so again, we had counties locally organized to find a way to do events, whether that was local public events or private ones at middle schools or high schools. Even there was an elementary school at some point involved, or in local businesses. And then I kind of went behind and tried to find other organizations that were statewide, such as the American Heart Association, others who were interested in helping out on the day. And so there's a lot of logistics that happened, a lot of communication that went on. And again, our Duke communications team did a fantastic job getting the message out ahead of time. So if you've seen my face on TV, I apologize. I'm probably not the best speaker in that situation, but you know what? Somebody had to do it, so I did. But we made it to the day. And the way it went is that everybody that did training, all the trainers, they tracked the amount of people they trained on a QR code on a log. And that all fed to a dashboard on our Race Cars landing page that anybody can see right now at www.racecarstrial.org. And people could follow along. And so through all of our counties and all their great work, we were able to train. The latest that I saw was just under 20,000, so 19,800. And so while we didn't quite break the world record from India, this is second place and also the most ever trained in the United States in a single day. And the thing I think I'm most proud of, no matter how many people we trained, is this is certainly the largest coordinated multi-site training effort in a single day anywhere in the world. And I think that just speaks to the team of race cars, our partners, and then everybody in the counties that showed up and trained. So I'm just completely thrilled by the effort.
Incredible that it came together so quickly. I mean, to coordinate that amount of effort across so many different organizations, so many different counties, really incredible accomplishment. Can you tell us why this matters beyond just that record, right? I mean, people are taking away obviously some education, but isn't it also showing us that, yeah, like maybe this is a little bit more scalable than we thought?
100%. Yes. I hope this record is beat. I hope that people take it and run with it in the coming years. I think that what we have learned, not just from the record, but from our interventions as a whole, is a blueprint for what other counties, other states, other countries even can look to do. I think leveraging exciting events such as trying to beat a world record is a great way to mobilize the public and the communities to accomplish something like this. And again, no matter how many people we ended up training, whether it was 10,000 or 50,000, every single person trained now has an opportunity to save a life. And so I think, Emily, to your point, this is something that can easily be replicated. I don't know about easily, but it can certainly be replicated. I'm happy to share with anybody how we did what we did. I hope to write it up to some degree and share with everybody else.
No, I think it's fantastic, and it's an amazing testament to the chain of survival starts with that first link. And as you've demonstrated, both in the trial, but then the exciting part is just to build the community, if you will, to really see that there's value. I think we all know it, but actually doing it and getting the excitement is one of the real strengths here. So again, I just want to say congratulations on doing something so impactful and meaningful. And, maybe as we round out our episode here, say so what's next in addition to the study? What's next for you and what's next for you in this space?
For the space, I think we're really excited to share our trial results when they come out, maybe later this year or next year, and hoping to talk to more folks interested in the space to see how they can learn from what we have done right and wrong and everything in between. I think there's a lot of energy around building a nation of lifesavers, as you said, Manesh, and I look forward to helping play a role in that to whatever degree I can. Personally, for me, I need to get through this PhD, and so I'm looking to propose my dissertation sometime here in the summer.
Watch out for that. There's some tough people in that squad, man. Watch out.
I know. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm looking forward to it. And having had these great experiences at the DCRI through race cars and other trials, I look forward to just continuing my own career as an independent investigator. For me, it's all about how can we learn to change systems of care, and I've learned a lot of lessons from this, and will continue to learn more as I go along. And yeah, I'm just excited for what the future holds.
And I'll just say, an effort like this provides a lot of skills that you will bring to dissertation defense, resilience, patience, collaboration. So, I think it's only going to be in service of your larger goal for sure. And also, again, a great foundation for your future work in this space. If somebody is listening and wants to get trained today, where should they go?
I think there's two ways you can go about this. One is look to the American Heart Association. They have all types of training opportunities. The other is that many of your local counties will have local training events held by emergency medical services, as well as local hospitals and other volunteer organizations. I think a simple Google search will yield quite a bit. It surprised me how much training that our local emergency medical services are doing. So certainly look to see if you can get trained there.
All the places you mentioned, including, local places, obviously there are a lot of events. The AHA, the CPR.heart.org has some places. I think I'll just say thank you again. This is critical work. And I think the way you've approached it and described it is my sort of general mantra in life, like, can you do things that matter? Is it fun? And do you get to do it with people you want to? And when you do that, things seem to go on for a long time. So keep doing the work. And we really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Manesh. Thanks, Emily.
Well, I thought that was a really amazing episode, Emily. I mean, we talk a lot about studies and science and implementation, but I thought that captured all of it, in the setting of, I'll call it a national work that American Heart Association and others are doing for CPR training. We have a trial in our state. We're trying to improve counties' response 3 ways with CPR and defibrillator access and knowledge. So I really thought it was exciting. It was really great to hear from Tyler, because I think in the setting of a large-scale clinical trial on cardiac arrest, the CPR training story is really powerful. But maybe I'll start by just seeing what your thoughts are as somebody who's training the next generation like him and seeing the work he's doing.
Well, first of all, I think it's pretty clear, this is a superstar, right? Super ambitious goal, huge lift, not a lot of time, but Tyler Cope is the kind of person to get that done. And it's incredible to see the success that they've had, and obviously lots more work to do, but this is a new form of public health. Often, we're really thinking about kind of these silos of that's epidemiology, or that's implementation science, or that's community engagement. And this study brings together so many different disciplines and does it in a way that reflects really decades of work, a lot of it led by colleagues like Chris Granger at the DCRI, to say here's really what works, and here's, what's sustainable and what's easy. So I just love to see the pragmatic approach, and also to really kind of frame this as a community effort. We all have to bring our best kind of skills and knowledge and courage to the table to move the needle on this condition, which, has been so hard to improve. So it's really exciting to see. It's ambitious, but obviously an incredible team to make this happen.
Yeah, and it was just a powerful story. And hopefully if you're at home, think about how you can get trained, how you can participate, how you can be part of the nation of lifesavers. You can make a difference. Don't be scared, and definitely be thinking about how to get it done. So thank you all for listening, because I think this is an important topic.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Endpoint. As always, we encourage you to share your thoughts or topic recommendations by emailing us at beyondtheendpoint@duke.edu.
Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on SoundCloud, Spotify, Amazon Music, or Apple Podcasts. You can also connect with the Duke Clinical Research Institute on LinkedIn, or by following @DCRI News on X and Blue Sky.
This has been Beyond the Endpoint. Resources related to this episode are available on dcri.org/BTE. If you have any burning questions about clinical research or healthcare, drop us a line at beyondtheendpoint@duke.edu. We'd love to address your questions in a future episode.